There's the snap. The game is over. The Chargers know it. Their fans know it. And the rowdy Buck bunch across the field behind our benches making more noise than the Chargers. The Buccaholics. The Buccaholics. The Buccaholics are standing proud in red. The game is over. The rowdy Buck bunch. The Buccaholics. The Buccaholics are standing proud in red. The game is over. The rowdy Buck bunch.
Fantastic.
Buccaholics.
Fantastic.
Buccaholics.
Fantastic.
Buccaholics.
Fantastic.
Buccaholics.
Fantastic.
Buccaholics.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
What's going on, Buccaholics? It's Jay back again. We are here one more time for episode 2 of Buccaholics Fan-Tastic. Last week, we had a really great time. It was the very first time we had ever tried to do the show, and I had my good buddy Art, the original Buccaholic, on. We had Chris Knotts on with his segment called Controversy. And I thought it went pretty good, so we decided we'd try and do it again. I am really excited this week, you guys. You have no idea. I have a very special fan spotlight guest for you this evening. You may see his smiling face down in the corner of the screen already, and I'm gonna go ahead and bring him in as quickly as I possibly can with just a little bit of an introduction. And I want to talk about this for just a second about the first time that I met this guy. It was last season. It was the very first tailgate that the Buccaholics ever tried to throw at an away game for the Bucks in Arizona, which, by the way, a place that we will be returning to mid-October of this year. And I'm really excited about going back to Arizona. Hopefully the tailgate will be great and the game will be better than what we saw last season. But this is a guy who came out and he joined us at our tailgate. It was the first time I had ever had the opportunity to meet him, even though I had heard his name many times before. He is one of those folks that if you're a Buccaneers fan, you've probably encountered this guy at some point or another. With a nickname like Old School, you kind of have to know that he's been around for a while, and he's one of the guys that has brought the What the Buck tailgate and What the Buck Really Matters Foundation and that whole group and all of those things to life in Tampa. So I am very excited to have him on. Please help me welcome Mr. Derek Fournier.
Thank you very much. I know that the old school moniker seems like I'm old, but I'm really 23, aged extensively by some of the football I watched for the last while.
I guess being a Bucks fan can do that to you, huh?
It's a son of a bitch. It really is.
I want to talk about, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this show in the first place is because I know that there are a lot of podcasts out there. In fact, yours is one of my favorite ones. I mentioned it last week. It's one of the ones that I listen to regularly, even though I don't always get to listen live. I'm always listening. There's a lot of analysis. There's a lot of statistics. There's a lot of what ifs and should haves and could haves. But what I kind of wanted the focus of this show to be is more about some of these fans that I've had the opportunity to meet over the years and people that have had experiences with this team and kind of give a chance for fans to come on the show and talk about why they love this team and why they're still, in some cases, still with this team after decades of a lot of pain and heartbreak and a few victories. Derek, I'm going to start out with you, and I just want to start out and just kind of get a little bit of history with you. So tell me about how long have you been a fan, and what was it that made you a fan in the first place?
Well, I think sort of a traditional model. My family's from the Northeast. Moved down when I was about 6 months old, so they didn't consult with me in advance. So we moved to Central Florida. My dad, and when I say Northeast, I mean Boston. I was born in Stoughton, Massachusetts. The Bucks got their franchise in 75, 76 would be their first year. It's the first conversation that I remember having with my father. I was 4. And he said, listen, we have a whole team now, and we all love sports, and so now we're Bucks fans. And he said, and anyone who plays the goddamn Dolphins. So that was the exact thing I remember. And I remember, the vibrating football tables, like you click them and they'd move around, and vaguely you'd play football with them. Sears, I think, sold them.
Oh, yeah.
I was a kid, right? I mean, even though I was a poor as hell kid, somehow my parents always got me really cool Christmas gifts. So compared to the other kids in the neighborhood, I was rich, I guess. But our trailer was just as shitty as everyone else's. So, but I had that, and you got Dallas and Pittsburgh, because that's just the only 2 teams that won anything in the 70s. That's what you got. I think I was the only kid who ever ordered the Bucks and the Patriots. So I had the Bucks and the Patriots in that game as well. So yeah, from that day forth, we watched the Bucks. We weren't able to see them on TV a lot. Obviously, I lived in Lakeland, which was out of the TV zone or outside the TV zone, whatever it was. So we would go down to the park and listen to G. Deckoff make the calls. And that's why, to me, even when I go to training camp, I've been covering training camp for 11, almost 12 years now. And still, as much as I'm still in awe sometimes by the players and some of the other stuff, I'm never as in awe as when I see Deckoff or he said something to me. I remember going to a table 3 years ago, and I was sitting at one of the tables over in the press area before everyone came out, and I hear, "Hey there, big fella, you mind if I have a seat with you?" And I was like, "No, let me clean. Can I get you a sandwich? What do you want?" So I grew up a typical Bucks fan, I guess. I was the only Bucks fan in my neighborhood, though one of my friends was a Seattle Seahawks fan. Beautifully, with the irony of us coming in at the same time. I wore my crazy toboggan to school and got made fun of, and just didn't care what anyone said about it. And so I always joke around. I had the other thing that dates me is JCPenney or Sears sold like a football getup that had shoulder pads and a crappy helmet, and it was vaguely looked like the Buccaneers had the sticker. And I had Jerry Eckwood because I thought Ricky Bell was overrated. I like the way Eckwood ran the ball better. I thought he was more dramatic. So I would try and play that because I was the youngest kid in the neighborhood, but I was also big. And they're like, "No, you can't wear pads. It doesn't matter."
I think you have to be the only person that I have ever heard even not just have a jersey with Eckwood on it, but to even mention the name of Eckwood. It's not something that happens very often.
I tell you, man, he was an underrated player, I think. But, obviously we had a lot of love for Ricky Bell. It's funny. Going through time, you think about the players that made impact on you. I remember, offensive linemen always were guys I could relate to because I was a big kid growing up. But I was also a quarterback guy. I mean, Doug Williams hit me in a lot of ways. My sister, growing up, my sister was married to a Portuguese man. He was very dark-skinned. And I remember one of my earliest sort of visceral memories was her coming down to visit us in Florida, and only being able to stay like 3 days because the racial tensions were so heavy that she had to leave. And then, even as a young man, I mean, I was only 7 at the time, really, when Doug was in prominence, and that's when she had come down. But I knew what was going on with the Bucks and with the not signing Doug and all this, the racial overtones. Even though the Bucks had shown a willingness to have black quarterbacks, they were only having black quarterbacks because they were good players. They sure as hell weren't working on equality. And it was interesting that even back then, we say that games have been politicized now. They've always been political. It's just whether anyone paid attention or not. So Doug Williams was someone who I held near and dear to my heart. I followed him in the USFL and was really happy when he reached the pinnacle with Washington. I'm glad he's continuing to do well. But yeah, that's sort of the background of how I got to be a Bucks fan, and it just sort of grew from there.
So you talked about growing up. You said that your family didn't have a lot, but they always managed to get you good toys. So the question that comes into my mind is, growing up in the area and being a fan of the team, and Dad being a fan of the team, when was the first time you got to see him live?
I never saw a live game with my father.
Wow.
Nope, we never had
the whole time growing up.
Never had the money to go to a game. Never had the combination of money and transportation. That's the trick. So in Lakeland, we're about 45 miles away from Tampa, and typically growing up the way I did, you didn't have a great car all the time, and so trips like that were non-trivial trips. So the combination of the trip, the car running, having the gas money, having the money for the ticket, Dad wanted to probably buy some stuff while you were there, stuff like that. We would never do it. And growing up in that environment, not to ask, right? So when I got my first job and started making kind of decent money, I wasn't making good enough to buy season tickets for the Bucks by any stretch. But I did buy season tickets for the Storm, and so that was my dad and my tradition was to go to the Storm game. And so, but he passed before we could ever go to a Bucks game together. We went to many Storm games together. He's one of the guys I sit behind. Actually, I sit in front of him now. He just moved behind me to the handicap section right behind me. My friend Bruce and his father, Joel Sr., they have a very similar thing with the Bucks games. And a father now, hearing another man talk about the fact, my friend has said, I don't know when Dad passes if I can come to another game, because that's been our thing. And when you think about sports, you mentioned it on the podcast. I love the game. I find it to be a beautiful, beautiful game, a beautiful sport. I love the analytics. I love the strategy and the tactics and all that. But there's so much more to it. You can pull out a sport. There's so much memory, emotion, all of these things. And for me, I remember the Storm games like they were yesterday. Right? And I know that my friend Bruce will remember every Bucks game with his dad. And I hope that at some point I'll be able to do that with my sons. So it does add an extra dimension to the game.
I had the opportunity last season to take my son to his very first NFL game. And it was amazing. And he's still, I'm going to be really honest. I was, and always will be just a big old nerd. And my son is every single bit his father. He is a big old nerd just like me. But he has started to kind of get into football a little bit later than I did. I started watching football when I was about 8, but he started to get into it. Last season, I got to take him to his first game. It was in San Francisco against the 49ers, and we won. And he was just so into it. It was the most excited that I've seen him get about football, because we were there. We were in that moment, And so I totally get what you're saying about the whole father-son thing. So you and Dad going to the Storm games, but the Bucks, when did you go to? So if you didn't get to go with Dad, when did you get to go?
So, I was going to a couple of games here, but I moved out of the state of Florida. I moved out to Seattle. Not really only irony, which is a lot of Morissette would call it irony. It's more sort of serendipitously, I guess. But I moved out in '99, and I was already on the waiting list for season tickets, but I wasn't trying to go and get, broker tickets or whatever. So I was out there from end of '98, early '99 through 2004. When I came down here, I started buying my season tickets through a broker. So I from that point forward, in that period of time, I came back. I went to a game in the Kingdom when Trent Dilfer got injured and Sean King came in. So there were games that were sprinkled around when I was out or when I came back. But my season ticket holding older years started in 2003. So the same year that my wife got pregnant with our first son, my name came up on the season ticket waiting list. So I would no longer be buying through a broker and paying the markup. But I felt like it was a bad spend, given that we had our first child on the way. And my wife told me, listen, you've waited all these years. Are these the tickets you want? And I told her at that point, well, I like the tickets that I'm getting through the broker. So she said, well, call the guy back and say if he can get you those kinds of seats, like there's probably a set on the other end of the stadium, that you'll do it. And so I called him and told him, he's like, you're giving me like 180 seats in the stadium to work with. And I said, yeah. So if you have them, let me know and I'll take 2. So that he had them and I took 2 and I haven't left since.
One of the reasons why I even was able to connect with you in the first place, one of the reasons why we kind of came together is because of this group, this phenomena, this whatever you want to call it, that is known as What the Buck. When I first kind of started I guess, really paying attention. I've always been kind of a fan on the outskirts because I've lived far away. I actually went to school in Lakeland, by the way, just so you know. I did.
Where?
I did. I went to Southeastern.
Oh Lord, you were the mighty fire.
Yeah. You know this.
I gotta watch my language with you. You're a religious boy.
Well, let's just say that in a former life I was. But yeah, I'm very familiar with Lakeland. But the interesting thing is that when I first kind of started with, it really kind of was with the Buccaholics. Vance, what in the world are you doing?
Oh, can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you and hear you.
I made it.
All right. We're going to get to you in a minute. Hold on.
I'm ready.
Well, now y'all know the surprise has been shot because Vance is coughing and hacking and moving crap around in the background back there, but that's all right. We're going to get to Vance in just a couple minutes. Before we do that, though, and Vance, you can feel free to chime in on this next part if you want to, but first of all, I want to talk about What the Buck. This is the reason that I know Derek. This is the reason that he and I are acquainted at all, is really because What the Buck got on my radar. And when Buccaholics started and we really wanted to connect with local fans in Tampa, What the Buck is that group in Tampa. They were that group that was like, they were everywhere. They had the biggest, best tailgate. They were doing charity work. They were doing in Tampa all the things that we were hoping to do as Buccaholics. So I want to talk to Derek because I know that that you're one of the people that is kind of a big part of that whole thing. So tell me a little bit about the history of What the Buck and how that all came to be and how you got to where you are now.
Sure. So when we talk about the podcast and talk about my wife not wanting to hear me talk about football, talk to someone who cared, that's really where the podcast started. And she actually came up with the name. We were trying to come up with a name for the podcast. My buddy Dave Sanchez and I were going to do a podcast. We didn't know if anyone would care, pay attention, listen, but we didn't care. We figured it was just a water cooler for people who weren't next to us. And so we wanted to come up with a name, and she came up with the name What the Buck, and I happen to have a marketing agency that I work close with who did our original logo. And we thought it was kind of catchy and a little kitschy and a little, we were uncensored. We didn't care. We had no broadcast training. We weren't trying to watch what we said or what we did. We were beholden to no one. And the whole approach was I would take off a couple of weeks over training camp and run off to Orlando and do the thing that I didn't think the local media was doing a very good job of, which was cover the team that I loved. And so we started to integrate with the local message boards here. And there were two that were really prominent at the time. You could argue probably successfully there were three, but I wasn't very active on the third one, which was the Pewter Report's Red Board. But the primary two were the Captain's Deck and another one called Bucks Chat. So what I would do is I would post my summaries, my YouTube videos, which is what I really started doing initially, and pictures from training camp at those spots. And I got to know the moderators of both the main boards. And one of the moderators was Cheryl, who goes by the name Spent. She really liked what we were doing, and she thought it was pretty cool. And so, we started collaborating very early with the podcast. So we started pushing the podcast out. And, we got on a couple of radars here and there because, generally speaking, we gave pretty good insight, and we were doing things that other folks weren't doing. We were pushing technology. If I did a summary, it was up within 20 minutes of practice being done. It was up on YouTube, whereas the print media wouldn't even do summary or information from training camp for 2 or 3 days maybe because they would only go out to one session. And there was this appetite, which is still there. There's a voracious appetite by sports fans for more content. And that's why I always – like some people are like, well, God, there's so many podcasts. Does that bother you? I don't care. Hell, make 20, 30, 40, 60 of them. I don't care. It's ice cream. Everyone's going to find their flavor. Not everyone likes everyone's style. So get the content out there. Now, I hate lazy content, but whatever. There's lazy content in every genre. I mean, look at Fox News. Oh, see, I'm going to alienate a bunch of listeners. I won't say that. But anyway, so that's really where it started. So once we started doing that, we started to meet every once in a while. We started tailgating, but not like big time tailgating like we are now. We literally like on a tailgate, Cheryl's truck with some beanie weenies and chili. And we met these guys from Bucks Chat. Captain Reno, Scott Dixon had a great tailgate over on the corner of Himes and MLK, and he invited us over. We brought some booze over. We got to meet him. And we started tailgating with those guys and started growing that. Well, then they implemented the 2.5 hour tailgate rule, and that was just not sufficient for our infrastructure. And so we had at that point merged what the Bucks chat tailgate. So we found a private lot after the Bucks essentially told us to go pound sand, and that's what we did. So we took all of our people, went to a private lot. They never got any more money from us. And then over time, it just continued to grow. So while that was all happening, so we had the website, we had some written content, we had the podcast. I started doing guest spots on local AM radio. We had a 2-night or 2-day a week show on the local radio show called the 2 in Touch. And we just kind of kept branching out everything. And then the tailgate grew into something of its own. It got larger, and we got on people's radar, and people would come down and visit. And so myself, Cheryl, Matt, there are a number. Big Nasty was the first one. There's a group called the Pro Football Ultimate Fan Association that we were all inducted in. It's sort of like the Hall of Fame for fans. So we got to know a bunch of other fans across the league, and we started going, listen, this is crazy. We're building an infrastructure here. We can teach others how to do this. Right? They don't have to be Bucs fans. The Texans can do this too. You know, the Steelers can do it too. And then Cheryl started really looking at the charity side. And really, when you think about the platform that we have, with What the Buck on the media side, What the Buck really matters on the charity side, that's very much her soul and heart. She's our executive director and founder. I've lent the platform, and I lend ability and voice and those sorts of things to it, but it's driven by her heart and her soul, and it's really escalated significantly. And so we think we've got a pretty well-rounded thing. We certainly wear gray hats. We don't pretend that we're saints, but we have a good time, and I think our heart's in the right place. And I think that resonates with the owners of the organization who know us very well. It resonates with the players and their parents. And so while sometimes we get some public recognition, and while we never go out trying to get recognition, we feel pretty proud when people know what we do.
Well, I have to tell you, as a fan who's been separated from Tampa, it's been impressive to me to be able to kind of look at that hometown crowd, that hometown organization. And really, like I said, when Art, who was on last week as the very first guest of the podcast, he's the originator of this group that we call Buccaholics. And when he started this whole thing, when he called us up and said this is what we're going to do, one of the first things that we talked about was we want to be able to give back to the community. We want to be able to do something more than just be fans and just talk on Facebook. And when that came up, we all kind of were like, well, the group that we're looking at is What the Buck, because look at what they're doing already. They are the home tailgate. They have the connection to the community. They have the connection to the team. They have the connection to the community. They're doing charitable works. And that's why last year, I mean, when we got to the point after we had done a couple of tailgates and we really felt like, okay, this is actually becoming something. What can we do with it? And the very first thing that came up was you guys and your golf tournament.
Oh yeah.
And when I saw that, and I started seeing it was just coming around to that time of year, and I saw some of the earliest posts that you guys put up, promoting and looking for people to sponsor holes and things like that. And I took that to the captains of the Buccaholics and said, this is where we start. This is where we start. Let's connect with a group that's already doing it, been doing it, knows what they're doing, and let's support Tampa from where we are. So I thought that was really cool that it gave us a platform to be able to do that. What I want to do, Derek, I want to get back to, I want to talk some football in a few minutes. That is kind of part of what we're here for, at least.
Sure.
But before we do that, I know everybody's watching. Vance keeps popping up on the screen every few seconds. And I promised when I first started talking about this show that I wanted to have some different people come on and do kind of recurring segments. And last week we had the very first one of those with my friend Chris Karma Kanats, who has a tendency to be a little bit controversial. So he started with a segment called Kanatroversy, where he basically gets to rant and piss people off. And I think he may have been successful at that last week a little bit. But this week, I had to bring my brother Vance on. Vance and I first met Vance last season, 2 seasons ago. I was driving down to L.A. just to go watch a game with some other Bucs fans. And this guy hit me up on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm in Fresno. Will you stop and pick me up?" And I had never met Vance. I didn't know who he was. He didn't know me. And I said, "Yes, absolutely. I'll stop and pick you up, and we will head down to L.A." And that began that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. But aside from being a fan and being my friend, Vance is also the official chef, one of the official chefs of the Buccaholics tailgates. And so I decided that what I wanted to do is bring Vance on and have him do a little bit of what I think he does really well, which is cook. So we're going to go Food Network on y'all for a few minutes here. We have decided to call this segment, Let's Go Grilling with Vance. Vance, what's going on, brother?
Hey, what's going on, Jay?
What do you got going on over there in Fresno?
Well, just hanging out, cooking like always, man. I got a big catering tomorrow to do and taking a little time out of my day and my prep to, share some tips with you guys here on the podcast, and everybody else watching, as far as what we can do, when we're out there tailgating, just little tips. You may already know, you may know more than me, but, it might be a learning lesson, so today what we're going to be doing is I got some tri-tips tomorrow, so I figured I'd cook one today. Tri-tips real popular here in California. I know in other states it's, there's brisket and a lot of the pork and different cuts of meat, but tri-tips here are very popular in California. It's a real popular dish I use for catering, tri-tip and chicken, and of course Mexican food, but we'll save that for another podcast. So
I got to tell you, my wife wants me to cook a tri-tip tomorrow, so you better give me some good tips.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'm going to do also is in this segment is trying to keep it as simple as it is. Barbecuing can take anywhere from, 4 hours to 8 hours to 12, 15 hours. Depends how long you want to slow cook and smoke your food. Tailgating, unfortunately, like us, you get into the stadium, 4 hours before, so you got 4 hours to cook, eat, drink a couple beers and get in the stadium for kickoff, so we're kind of limited on time. So that's why I kind of want to make this kind of simple. What we got today is we got the tri-tip. Check out down here.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got
Derek, are you watching this? Vance is about to whip his meat out on camera.
Oh, everybody check out my meat. Slap it. It's good. Okay, this is basic tri-tip. This is the cut right here. This is untrimmed. I buy it just because it's a little bit cheaper. I buy it in bulk. I get a better price on it. You can buy it already trimmed up, but since I'm used to prepping it, I do it myself. So here's your basic tri-tip. Okay, start out like that. And then I clean it up. So this is what it ends up look. The fat's all gone, mainly just the meat. Okay, and some people like to leave the fat on. It just depends. So what I'm going to do here is I get it all trimmed up, and then I'll get some seasoning out. We got Pappy's here. That's real popular here in Central California. They're a local company. A lot of people use that. You can use something like this, Montreal steak, whatever you feel, any kind of seasoning you like. What I'm going with is stuff. I used to have a restaurant. I use this on all my burgers, all my seasoning for all my sandwiches and stuff like that. It's just basically salt, pepper, garlic. So it's pretty simple. Yeah, it's pretty simple. So what we're going to do here is just use a dry rub. I mean, like I said, there's several different ways to, marinate your meat. Some people like liquid marinade, soy sauce, different stuff. I just like a simple rub, get it a nice healthy coat, just rub it all in there. get it nice and going. And, you know, a nice heavy coat. You taste the outside, but, you know, you need it to penetrate. So what I'll do is I'll prep it the day before, like today, and then let it sit overnight, you know, so it's ready to go in the morning when I'm ready to barbecue. Or smoke, I should say. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, and since, you know, we're on a time limit also here, I've already got one ready, but, you know, I like to use, I don't know if you guys can see here, I got my bag of Kingsford. You know, it's the best of the best. It's good. It burns good. I like using that. I like using my charcoal starter. Starts up the fire real easy. I don't have to use lighter fluid. I just need a little bit of paper, you know, put the charcoal in here, put paper, light it. About 15 minutes, all the coals are glowing red hot, ready to go. So then I dump them in my smoker and ready to go. You know, I don't have, but I also like to use wood chips. I like apple wood chips. They give it a nice smoky flavor. Not too heavy. You can get into, you know, the mesquites, the cherry woods. You got your different choices. So, but I like apples, which I use today. I just don't know where I left my bag. I was kind of low, but apples, my choice. Let me see.
So when you're smoking tri-tip, you were talking about how at a tailgate we don't typically have all that much time. How long are you smoking those for?
Well, on these, you actually can do one at the at the tailgate. Right now, the one I did is about 2 hours. You can do it for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Depends how well done you want it. You know, I like a little bit more medium rare on my tri-tip. You know, little pink in the center. You know, soft, but it has that smoky flavor. You know, the outside gets real crusty. You know, and that's where all the flavor from the seasoning's at. So it can be a little salty, but then the center is nice and juicy, and it's good. So, you know, about 2 hours, you know, depending. So in a tailgate, you can do one. That's kind of why I chose a tri-tip. You know, I mean, if you get into the briskets for 15 hours, we don't have that kind of time. Unless you're what the buck and you got your own tailgate spot and you can tailgate all day, you know. But,
Crazy last year, a number of times was out there probably 15 hours cooking. So I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's like I said, we're on a time limit, so we're trying to make it as simple as possible on the go, you know, stuff like that. So let's check out this bad boy. I like to, when I pull them out, I like to let them rest for at least, well, I'll probably try 30 minutes, something like that, you know, so all the juices can absorb back into the meat and it stays nice and juicy. You get an igloo, ice chest, anything you got. I got one, so I just have a small igloo here. And see what we got here. Oh, that smells good.
Now, I've never put a tri-tip in an igloo cooler. What's the benefit of that?
Well, because if you cut it right away, you cut it and all the blood drips out. So what
Right.
you want to do is you want to put it in an igloo so it kind of like keeps cooking and the juices stay in the meat. So when you cut it, it's kind of, you know, evenly spread out, you know, so it stays juicier when you cut it.
There you go.
Okay, so here's the tri-tip. I don't know if you can see there. Okay, it's nice and, you know, has a nice little char on the outside. You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's got a little juice dripping there. It's going to be kind of hard to see me cut it, but the main thing when cutting a tri-tip or pretty much any kind of meat, you got to look at the grain. I don't know if you guys can see it here. The grain right now on this one's going like this. So you want to cut against the grain. You don't want to cut like this because then the cuts don't come out right. So you want to cut against the grain like this. Okay, so the grain's going this way, you're cutting this way, and you're cutting your slices. So let me do a couple here. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I got to see that color on the inside of that thing. That bark on it looks good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we're all done here. It's, if you can see here, it's all cooked all the way through. I mean, you know, I might have left it a little too long, you know, maybe a little more pink. But, I mean, it's real soft. It's tender. Let's try it out here.
This is where it gets to rub it up. He's eating.
Oh, yeah. All right. You guys can cut away now. I'm good. Oh, it came out really good. Like I said, I probably threw it in about 6:30 Cali time. I tried jumping in here about 8:45. I had to let it rest about 15, 20 minutes. So it just depends. My fire was a little hot. You want to stay around 250 225 when smoking. I was kind of closer to 250. So, you know, it kind of burned a little quicker. So I probably should have taken it a little earlier, but I like to have a gauge on there. That way I can tell, you know, how long I've, what the temperature is, you know, because it's hard to keep track. I mean, it's smoking, it's cooking, it's hot, but, you know, temperature is a big thing. You know, you got your air vents and all that stuff, but, I mean, it comes with grilling. I mean, everybody learns that along the way. So, yeah, that's your basic tri-tip. You know, you just get some, buy some rolls at the store, throw them on there, barbecue sauce. If you want ketchup, grilled onions, whatever you want to do. I mean, it's in this possibility. It's a sandwich. It's tailgate food. It's simple. Done within 2 hours, 2.5 hours. You can do it at home. You can do it at the tailgate, just depending on your setup, So
There you go. You got the tips right there. Vance, take a step back so we can see you real good and give us a let's go.
Oh, well, yeah, you got it. I got my helmet here. This started as a tradition last year on the way to San Francisco. So we're driving down the road, and we hadn't slept that night, and I was really tired. So I slept on the way up there. I woke up, and a good friend of mine had sent me this helmet. So I took it with me, and I was just amped. I'm like, we're almost to Frisco. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. So I go, and I'm like, I put this helmet on, and I'm staring at the cars next to me, and I'm going, let's go. Another car passes by, let's go. And, we were following Jay. I roll up to him, and his kids, they all look at me, and I go, let's go. And I was cracking up. I could see him, So from that day, it just kind of stuck, and then I started made a few videos with the helmet on, It's a little gag, but I like it, man. I didn't realize how big it got, because when we went to San Diego, I showed up, and people were, Vance, let's go. And I'm like, what? That's a thing, really? Like, okay. But yeah, that's my thing. That's why we call it "Let's Go Grillin' with Vance," because that's my motto. That's my theme. So I'm gonna roll with it. I'm gonna embrace it, and I like it, man. If we can get out there and cheer on our team, we'll be ready. So I'll be out there in Arizona this year. Definitely take this with us for the Creamsicle Invasion. We're gonna be doing tacos just because that's a lot easier. And we're feeding a lot of people. You need too much room to smoke all this and time, and tacos just a lot easier. But maybe we'll do that in another segment, kind of show you how we do that, and so.
Oh yeah, I think we'll probably have to have you back on here in a little bit right before that mid-October game and talk about tacos.
Right. Yeah. Whenever you want. Like I said, I do this all the time, so we'll come up with different recipes, things we can do out at the tailgate for anybody watching, and and don't forget, when you're tailgating, you always need a beer. Today I'm doing the Firefall Red. It's from Tioga Sequoia. It's here locally in Fresno. Oh, you got from Paso down the street. Okay. Yeah, the 805. So Firefall, it's a red beer, similar to Irish Red, real delicious. That's a tailgate must. You got to have your beer, your barbecue, and that's how you get the tailgate going.
All right.
Okay, well, I'll leave you guys with one more. Let's go. So thank you for having me. We'll catch you next time on Let's Go Grillin' with Vance.
There we go. All right. Derek, I'm back to you, man. Let's talk football a little bit. We got some fan info. I like hearing stories about other people's experiences with the team. But at some point, I want to talk Bucs football, and I'm ready for that right now. So let's go back in time a little bit. It was a couple of days ago when we had our game on Saturday. And so I want to just kind of talk to you a little bit about it. First of all, what are some things what are some positives that you took away from Saturday?
Well, I think that one of the big races, and it's interesting that we're at a point now where we're looking at the race for the 5th wide receiver spot. But Reedy really had a chance to show what he could do out there, and he took advantage of it. And when you look at trying to make a roster at this point, you're only going to get a few plays of the game typically. Now, the 4th game will be different, and that's going to be where these final guys, those final, say, 6 to maybe 7 spots that are still questionable, are going to get cemented. So when they get those opportunities under the light, if you get 6 plays, you better stand out for a positive reason 6 times, right? So I thought Reedy did a good job of doing that. I thought Godwin showed exactly what we thought of him coming in, which is he's not a replacement for Adam Humphries. While he can run out of the slot, he's more comfortable as an X or a Z, and he went out there and did good work, used good body control. Howard showed out a little bit, given an opportunity to do what he does. On defense, I thought you got a chance to see, and this is going to piss some people off. Probably your boy Chris will disagree with me. I think Ryan Smith played a really good game. I don't care about the point of the yards against him. He was getting pushed off on most of the night, and he doesn't know how to get around that yet. That's one session in a film room that teaches him how to make that obvious, and it's over. But he was right in that guy's kitchen every time when he was getting pushed off. And those were dimes that were getting dropped on him by Kaiser, right? And that's really good coverage against a really good receiver against a really accurate pass. So I liked his positioning, and I like what he does on special teams. So that made me feel good. Seeing McClain step up was really important, because I actually think, as much as I like JV and Elliott, and I think they both have a possibility of making the squad, they really need – the biggest challenge we have with our shell on the back for the safeties and cornerbacks is communication. So athletic ability is certainly one thing you've got to see, but you need someone who can understand the scheme, understand the call, and communicate with the other players in that coverage shell. And McClain is absolutely that guy. So if he still has the body to do it, if he can still got the wheels to do it, then having that vet leadership, if a guy like Conti goes down, because you know you're going to lose Conti for 2 games a year. He plays too aggressively. He gets broken. That's what happens. Tandy seems to be, pretty, he's younger, more resilient, so I'm not worried about him, but I'm expecting 2 games of Conti to be down. I'm also expecting Deshaun to go out for a couple games. It's just the way it works for some guys. So having another guy back there who can be a charismatic leader, I think, is important. And so those are some of the big ones. And then, finding a way to kick field goals was useful, because I was ready to stop kicking field goals and say the hell with it, and just go.
I think you froze. I don't know if you can hear me or not, but you froze. I'm gonna talk, and hopefully we'll get you back up again. I'm stuck here. Oh, hey, he's moving again. Hey, all right. It's funny you mentioned that. I actually was listening to you guys when you were on the unification broadcast.
Oh yeah.
Last week, and I heard you talking about this attitude of let's just skip kicking altogether. Let's just go for 2 every time. Let our punter kick off. I was wondering what was going to be the response to the success that Folker had out there on Saturday.
It's so funny. I mean, as a coach, you don't hate kickers because they're important. They're part of the game and all that. But the reality is the best they can do is exactly what their job is: make a kick. Right? I mean, that is the zenith of what they can accomplish. You're not going to get a field goal kicker who's going to be like, yeah, coach, I'm good from 80 in. Right? That doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. But once you get to 55 and in, you pretty much expect them to be nails, right? You should just go make the kick. I'm not giving you a high five to make that kick. That's your goddamn job. Right? Way to go. I'm going to kick you in the teeth if you don't do it. And that's such a terrible position. Who the hell would want to be a kicker? Right? It's horrible. Do away with it. Kicking's bad for the game. I don't like it. Bring back the drop kick. Get Doug Flutie back in there. He had the balls to do it in a real game the last time it was legal.
You know what? That would be something to see, wouldn't it? Bring back the drop kick. I could get behind that, actually. I think that would be really interesting.
Good at it.
What's that?
I bet Brian Anger would be good at it.
You know what? I don't think that there's much that Brian Anger wouldn't be good at.
Nope.
I'm a fan. I got to tell you, it's been a while since I've been able to say that I'm a legitimate fan of a punter. But I was actually on with Pewtercast with Ren, and they almost laughed me off the show when I mentioned the fact that I was such a fan of Brian Anger as a punter. Although legitimately we were talking about what players would we keep and what players would we lock down if there was an expansion draft. And I put him on my list, so I can see why they kind of gave me crap about it. But I'm a fan of Brian Anger. I think he's doing well for us. I'm expecting a lot from him this season, and people underplay the legitimacy of punter as weapon.
Oh, he is a weapon, absolutely.
But oh man, when you got a guy that consistently pins teams down, field position is the game.
What's funny is understatement is more profound. If your defense becomes what I think Mike Smith and his staff believes this defense can become, think about the defense of the Bucs in the heyday. If your defense has a higher than likely percentage chance of getting a sack, just getting a sack, right? And I can pin you inside the 7, I have an opportunity for a 9-point swing. Because I can get my 2, get the ball back on a short field, and score my 7. This makes this a very interesting strategic decision to punt. Because if he continues to throw darts down there, guess what? Line them dogs up, right? Take the risk. I dare you. I dare you to take the shot. This is going to be an aggressive defense. If I put on my super excited, optimistic hat, this defense will score a lot of points, man. Yeah, they're going to get scored on. There's going to be some ugly-ass plays where people are going to go the distance on them, right? But if they're listening to Coach Smith, they're tapping those ears, they're tagging those ears back, and they're going after the quarterback, and some really exciting things could happen. You're absolutely right with Hanger.
And I remember watching Smith's defense in Atlanta. And I remember it wasn't the first season, it was the second or the second season, I think, where really, and he said it coming into Tampa, it's going to take us a couple of years to get this defense where we want it. And I remember watching, and it comes back to me very clearly. In particular, it was a game where they were playing against Peyton Manning. And Peyton Manning has always been one of those quarterbacks to me he is that at the line change of call quarterback. He's that guy. His vision of a defense and his ability to see what they were doing. And I literally watched his face and he drew a blank watching that Atlanta defense shift and change at the last second right before the play went off. And when Mike Smith came to Tampa, I said to myself, man, if he brings that kind of aggressive mentality and that ability to go to line up and make changes on the fly at the last second as the play's about to happen, he is going to seriously screw some quarterbacks' minds up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And like I said, he said it coming in, it's going to take us a year or two. Well, here we are. Here we are, and I'm ready to see now this season. And preseason, shmee season, I don't give a damn that the Browns were able to come back and score at the end of that game and win that game. I don't give a damn, because the reality is we have not even begun to see the defensive schemes, the wrinkles that are going to be added in when we go into real games.
Yeah, preseason is what it's supposed to be. It's practice against people you don't mind hitting. So, as Bucs fans, I think we have to be cautiously optimistic. Take the pluses and the minuses from those games. Those guys still get graded out on that tape. But when it comes to Miami, we have to see what part of that playbook gets opened up, right? So if this defense goes up against Miami, Jay Cutler or not, doesn't matter, right? You can't predict who you're going to play against. You just line up against the people who are there. So all these people that talk about, oh, well, so-and-so was hurt and this other person was hurt, I don't give a crap who was hurt. If they're playing quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, they're the one you have to sack. They're the one you have to try and cause turnovers from, right? If they go out there and do that dog work and get 3 sacks and a turnover or whatever and keep them to under 150 yards, we should win. We should win by 20 points. You know, and that is the workmanlike attitude this team has to get if it's going to become what fans believe it can be, which is it's not about, wow, I really hope we can be competitive today against the Miami Dolphins. Wow, I think we have a shot to win today against Miami Dolphins. It's, hey, we got to go do work and get this win and then move to the next game. Right? Let's go get the work. You defense, do your job. Offense, get your 24 points. Defense, hold them to under 13, and let's walk. That's the job. Overachieve and you hold them to 0, great. Defense, way to go. If you overachieve and you get 48 points, great. But you don't get to carry them over. That's like coaches that don't call their timeouts. You don't get extra points for them, man. No one's giving you chicken McNuggets after the game because you didn't use a timeout.
Yeah, it's not like days off at work that you get to save up and then bank until the next year.
No rollover.
No rollover. So I caught a little crap last week. Nothing serious, just a little bit of minor. One of my friends says on Facebook after listening to the podcast from last week, you guys went the entire show and never really talked about Adam Humphries. Well, this is a friend of mine, and he's definitely an Adam Humphries fan. We've been talking a lot about the possibilities and the different ways that we can line up this offense. Legitimately, how often do you think we see Adam Humphries when we get to real gameplay and all these different possible options that we have? How often do you think we see Adam Humphries, and how big of a contribution do you see him making?
That's the right way to frame it. So there's only so many players who are allowed on the field at the same time. I honestly believe, unless this offensive line shows that they are just impenetrable, that I don't see us going empty often in a format that would allow us to have both tight ends and Adam Humphries on the field at the same time. I think Coach Cutter is going to want to be in a 12 personnel group with 1 back and 2 tight ends way more than normal because he's got a tremendous amount of flexibility there. He can flex those tight ends out to the slots. He can flex his back out to the edge. And when you flex the back out to the Z. That cornerback has to adjust. You can't cheat and have a linebacker run outside. He's going to be out of his gaps, right? So the cornerback has to go outside. That's a natural mismatch. Now you get a mismatch on whoever the hell the receiver is that he just vacated, right? So I don't know how many snaps he'll get in offense. I know that everyone he's in, he's dangerous, and I don't think it matters. And I think that would be my actual retort now that I've gone through the sort of intellectual processing of it. What is great about all of these skill guys is not a single one of them gives a damn about how many yards they get. Not a single one of them cares about how many touches they get, how many touchdowns. Now, Deshaun Jackson's going to want to get looks. He's always wanted looks. That's who he is, right? Hell, he was bitching about it in Jacksonville. Man, I'm running these routes. I'm not even going to look. Listen, D-Jack, I love you. Shut up. Right? Your job is to run the route you're told to run. Three's job is to throw it to who he wants to throw it to. And if you don't get the ball thrown to you, your job is to what? Run the route you're told to run, right? Mike Evans gets that. Adam Humphries gets that. Our tight ends, every one of them, the 36 we got in the tight end room, all of them get that. Right? But that's the thing. If you go down from, let's say he got average of 12, well, probably last year closer to 14, 15 plays, right? He probably drops that by 30% just because of what's on the field. But when he gets it, think about the room he has to run now. This is the part that I don't think the fans have quite gotten their heads around yet because they haven't seen all the weapons deployed. When you think about the route combinations that are possible, when you got a guy who can take the top off, who's going to demand help over the top. If you don't give him help over the top, Jameis is going to go ahead and try and throw it to him. He may not be successful, who knows, but he's going to give it a shot because ain't no one's staying up with the kid, right? It's just not going to happen. Well, now they can't shade Mike Evans' side. So now someone's getting his ass whipped by Mike Evans over here. The whole middle of the field is open. O.J. Howard can chip and release. Cam Brate can't be covered by most linebackers, and most safeties struggle with him too. So if you just pull one of those out and pull Adam Humphries on a drag route over the middle or a comeback or a hitch, he's got 10 yards of move to go. He's not catching the ball and getting hit in the mouth. I really, and I know that my man Chris, Bucksbury fame, and I argue all the time about this, and I talk about it too. You know, potential just means you haven't done shit yet. On paper, there are too many weapons here. The biggest struggle this team should have is someone getting mad they're not touching the ball enough, and that's up to Coach Cutter to beat out of people, and I think he can do it.
And I appreciate the way that you mentioned that and the way that you brought that up too. That, and I agree with you. I kind of get the feeling that we've got players right now who aren't those Showtime players, those selfish, those ball hog kind of players. It seems like the guys that we have, with the possible exception of D-Jax, because like you said, he's already talking about his touches, but it seems like the guys that we have are of that mentality of, it doesn't matter if I get X number of balls thrown to me or X number of times the ball's given to me if I'm the running back. What matters is that I make the most of the ones when it is given to me. Absolutely.
Absolutely. The culture, and for years we talked about there needs to be a culture change in Tampa Bay, and it meant different things to different people, and it allowed soapboxes from, you know, here to Albuquerque, which I still don't think really exists, by the way, Nikki. I love you, but that's a fake city. But what these guys all get is it's just about a win, right? It doesn't – the individual stats don't mean anything. You're going to get paid, guys. Everyone's going to get paid. That differential – I don't care if you go out and catch 200-yard games and all sort of stuff. If you don't win, then you're just Dan Marino, the greatest quarterback to never win the big game, and there's always an asterisk beside your name, right? So if you're worried about legacy, if you're worried about cementing your legacy as a player, you have to try and win the big game. That's why Bill Belichick can sign anybody he wants, because anyone who signs in New England has a chance to play for a damn Super Bowl. You just know. You can hate New England all you want to, but right now, if you and I got a call and said, hey, for some reason, we want you guys to come out and play for New England. Yes. Shit, yeah, I quit my job. Sorry, hun. I'll be back at the end of the football season because I might get a trophy.
Knowing that option is there. And I think you're right. I think that the players that we have they're about that big win. They're about that cash in at the end of the season, not that catch in the game that they're playing right now. Not the fact that he didn't throw to me, he threw to him. It's about that cash in at the end of the season. And that, I agree with you. That's when you talk about a culture change, when you talk about an attitude change, I think that's the attitude change that we've needed, that we've got going now. And I'm so excited about that.
Now it just has to come to fruition, right? That we want to be great thing feels good. It sounds good in a locker room. It's great for a hype huddle before the game, but you got to go win. right? That's
It's time to translate it.
yeah. It's got to be the wins, and 5 in a row is not enough, right? It's a 16-game season. Right, Raheem screwed up with the race to 10. God love him for any of his other issues, but the race to 10 was a good idea. It was a good motivational ploy. They got there and they still got pimped, right? Race to 16. If you don't make it, you still might have got 14. The whole season is just 16 one-game seasons. Don't worry about the count. How many do you have to win? This one. I have to win this one, right? And then I'll worry about the next one. Don't worry about it.
You brought up the I forget the number you used, but I'm going to go with 49 and a half tight ends currently on the roster that we have to cut down to 53. So let's go ahead and talk about that for just a second. I mean, God knows it's been some time since we've been in a position where, like you said, where the discussion is who's the fifth wide receiver, who's the backup to the backup to the backup. But we're in that position in several spots, I think, right now, where we are able to look at, we're solid here. We've got some possibilities for depth. When we get down to, and it's coming on quickly, when we get down to 53 men, who are the tight ends that are left standing?
I would have bet a solid $12.50 US that Luke Stocker was not going to be a Buccaneer this year. Not because Luke did anything wrong. Luke does the things he does very well. He's probably the 7th best offensive lineman on the team at the tight end position. Right? He blocks better than most guys that are supposed to block for a living. He's got surprisingly good hands. He's just not particularly fast. Right? He is a great all-around great. He's a very serviceable. He's a better Anthony Becht. Right? He's very, very good at what he does. But I figured the vet money, you look at the talent they had there. They got Arclair. They were very high on Arclair. They had him as a draftable target. Went and got him. He looks the part. He runs smoothly. He's got very soft hands, blocks well, does all the pieces and parts. Then you got Westbrook, who I fell in love with in training camp because physically he's just a monster. But neither one of those guys have shown up when the lights are on. And that sucks, right? Because you see this and you see it in practice, like, oh, man, if only they could do. But they haven't. Neither one of them has. I don't think there's any risk if you cut them of them going anywhere else, to be honest. I mean, they could go off and play. They're talented guys. But I think your tight ends are going to be an unsurprising stack of 4. I think it's going to be Howard Brait, Mark Cook's son, Alan Cross, and sorry, calling Mark. And one time I called him Mark Cook, I think, or I don't know. I screwed up the verbiage. And then Luke Stocker. And I think that they get the extra spot on the roster by not carrying a fullback because they can move Cross or Stocker back to run that fullback if they want to go heavy.
Right. I was listening to them on Saturday during the game and before and after the game talking about Cross and the fact that there is that versatility there. There is a little bit of flex with being able to put him in the tight end spot, move him back to the fullback spot. I like that option a lot. I am, of course, being a Bama fan. Of course, everybody knows this about me by now that I am just completely over the moon with the idea of OJ Howard being on this team, and I don't know. I think there's an undeniable chemistry that Cameron Brate has had the opportunity to build with Jameis Winston. And like you said, he's that guy that it doesn't seem like anybody can keep up with him and cover him.
No, what's funny about that, if you watch it, fundamentals of receiving are not a surprise. It's usually not about your speed. It's about how you cut. Cam Brate's cuts are outstanding, and they don't look like it. They look sloppy because his upper body is sloppy, but his feet are incredibly clean. And so when he comes in and out of cuts, even subtle ones, he loses people. And so he doesn't have to out-athlete anybody. He's got really, really good hands, typically. He's had bad days too, but generally speaking, he's got gloves on, right? And so he's going to get open. OJ Howard, your man OJ is a beast, right? He had a day in training camp that I don't think I've ever seen. He could not be stopped. It didn't matter what they did. They could have hit him with a damn sledgehammer. He was still going to complete a play. But the day after, he couldn't get anything right. And he's a young guy. You're going to have that. But physically, he's so gifted. Got all the tools in the world. But what do you do? Like, and I know that we sound like the proverbial, over the moon fans. Oh my God, our team is so great and we haven't done shit yet. But how do you cover just those 4?
Yep.
put those four out. I don't care who the running back is. Put that running back. It doesn't matter. You have a real problem trying to cover these four guys.
Who? Well, since you brought up running backs, though, and I'm in complete agreement with you, and I do think that we sound totally pie-eyed sometimes when the way that we've been, and it's not just on this, on my podcast or on your podcast, it's on every podcast that has to do with the Buccaneers right now. We're all pie-eyed, and we're all going so many weapons, so many possibilities, so many options of different ways to line this offense up, but the reality is, the players are there. The talent is there. The skill level is there finally for us to be that optimistic about the options that we have on offense. But let's go to the running backs for just a minute. Let's talk about that for just a minute, because that's another area where we have several players. Not all of them, I think, are going to end up as a part of that 53-man roster. So who's left standing?
Well, I've made no bones about the fact that I think Doug Martin is the best running back on the field. I know there are many who don't think that's true. I would encourage those people to go watch more film, but they would just tell me that I'm wrong. So I like Doug, irrespective of anything off the field. He seems like he's gotten his stuff together. I find it funny that we attack him, viciously, but no one has a problem with Quan Alexander's issues that he had. I'm okay with both because I know that we're all human, and I've had a chance to talk to both those young men. And I think they're working their asses off for the right thing. So I think Doug Martin, Jacquizz Rodgers is an obvious one too, especially with Doug being out for the 3 games. I think Jacquizz is a very similar back, and I have no problem with him being the starting tailback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Is he Adrian Peterson 3 years ago? No, he's not. Guess what? There's only one of those. Stop crying about it. Right? He does everything right. He runs the ball well. He doesn't turn it over. He picks up blitzes. He has good hands. Now, Charles Sims is the real mystery, because I heard some things from Coach Cutter the last day of training camp that I had not heard before about how good Charles Sims was as a blocker. He's so good on a blocker that he plays on special teams in blocking, which is pretty impressive, to be honest, because I would have thought he was the odd man out. I know that the team likes Peyton Barber a lot. I know that everyone thought McWeapon was going to replace everybody because they drafted him, so of course he's going to be the starting running back. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But again, I would tell those people they should watch more football and stop talking as much. And I think you've heard Coach Cutter say McNichols has to show something or he's in jeopardy of not making the team. I don't think Russell Hansbrough makes the team. I don't think Blake Sims makes the team. I think you got Rodgers, Martin, Barber, Sims.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And I think that, and this is something that we actually brought up last week, was a lot of people kind of giving Sims crap. And I think that, and what we were, like I said, what we were talking about last week is part of that is the fact that they were asking Charles Sims to be something that he isn't, which is an every down back. And I don't think that that's the position that he's born to play. I think that he is that guy that is going to be a change of pace. I think he's that guy that's going to come in and make something happen and be a difference on it at running back, as opposed to, like you said, Doug Martin, who I'm with you 100%. I believe in Doug Martin. I think that he's going to come back when he comes back onto the field this season, he's going to be stronger than he's ever been. I think we've seen it already in what we've seen him doing in training camp and what we've seen so far, just the little that I'm able to see being 3,000 miles away, and everybody talking about the fact that he looks stronger, he looks faster, he looks this, he looks that. I'm excited about having him back. I agree that that Quiz is a very similar type of runner, which is one of the reasons why I wondered if maybe he would be one of the ones that might be looked at to be cut. But then you get to McWeapon, and one touch on Saturday for -1 yards officially, and you've got coach saying he's got to show something or he's not going to be there. I don't know. I've tried not to formulate a negative opinion against Charles Sims until I see him playing the role that I think that he's actually meant to play.
I think we got thrust into the starting running back role. Like you said, there was no catering to his running style, and he's not, and this goes back and forth. Every time he has a successful run between the tackles, people go, look, he can do it. He can do it. He did the thing you said he can't do. Yeah, but can he do it 24 times a game, right? And I don't know that you want him to. Are you okay saying, okay, well, if both those guys go down, Doug and Quiz go down, Charles Sims comes in. Do you not run your ISOs? Do you not run your power? Do you just drop those out of your playbook and go to more spread type stuff, more jets, more sweeps? You can do that, but you're becoming one-dimensional. And that's a challenge. If you become one-dimensional, it's a problem. Charles Sims is a unique talent in space. Now, the other thing Coach Cutter said was, and I am never a fan of this, I still am skeptical as shit about it, to be honest, is that Sims can go out and play receiver. Generally speaking, when I hear someone say that position X can become position Y, I immediately go, you're full of crap, right? Because there's really a lot of difference between those things. Now, one of your exceptions is fullback to tight end to fullback at times. But other than that, that's like people you say, oh, well, Tebow can become a tight end. No, he can't. I don't know how great an athlete he is or how hard-nosed he is or how much he lifts weights. He hasn't been getting the shit kicked out of him for the last 15 years, right? You just don't go do that. But Coach seemed very serious about that. So if they were willing to say, you know what, if those two guys go down, we drop some of the power game, we go to more spread, we flex Charles Sims out, because now you put Charles Sims out there on the cornerback. This is a real interesting look all of a sudden, because he's going to get open. So I don't know. I think he's played himself in. The blocking, I think, is a lot more important than people realize, because they got to protect that franchise. And that's where I think McNichols has hurt himself, not being having his head in the playbook and knowing where he's supposed to be, and not getting so good on blitz pickup, etc. I think that's going to weigh in pretty heavily on this running back stack.
So do you think that McNichols ends up staying or going?
I think they'll try and keep him. I don't think he's put enough up that anyone's going to try and steal him.
Okay. What about the idea? And this is again something that came up last week. What about the possibility that Rodgers could be with us for the first few weeks while Doug is out, and then could possibly become a casualty?
I don't know why people are trying to get rid of Quiz, right? He hasn't done anything wrong. He runs the ball hard. He knows the offense. He picks up blitzes. He's got good hands. Like, it seems like people are trying to find a way to get the shiny new penny a spot on the bench, and they're saying, "Well, damn the quarter we already got." I don't get that compulsion, right?
Well, I think that, and it's something that you brought up earlier, but I think the reason that it has come up repeatedly is because he is similar to Doug in his running style, and people are looking at it, and I'll be honest, myself included, and going, do we need two Doug Martins?
If he can run for 1,300 yards in a season, catch the ball, and pick up blitzes, yeah, I'll take two of them. I mean, really, it's about efficacy. It's not about style. You don't get style points in this league, right? I don't have to have one ballerina and then one sumo wrestler. If I got two sumo wrestlers who can get the job done, I'll take the two sumo. I'll take two ballerinas. I don't really care.
Okay.
Right? You got to who's a vet who knows he's not going to screw you up. That's the other thing, right? I remember when Tim Brown used to return punts for us. And I'm going to say return a little loosely here. But every special teams coach in the world will tell you that the most important thing a return man can do is catch the ball.
Yeah, not muff.
Catch the ball. That's it. Just do that, right? So when you look at the running back position, I need 3.5 yards. That's what I need. No turnovers. Protect the quarterback.
There you go.
I didn't see out of McNichols that made me think that he's a talent that you've got to find a place for, right? I don't see anything about him that's any better than Peyton Barber, who they already know the caliber of, right? They way more tape on Peyton Barber, and it's not because McNichols is a bad kid or not talented or any of those things. When I make these assessments, it's not a personal judgment. It's none of that. What I'm saying is, if I've got in glass A, I've got Peyton Barber, and in glass B, I've got McNichols. I had years with glass A. I'm real comfortable with glass A. I know everything about glass A. This one over here, I don't know. So yeah, maybe there's some upside, but if you have upside against the damn Redskins, you better crack open a 45-yard run. Right? You better shake someone out of their damn shoes. You better beat someone's ass on Pass Pro. There better be some film that jumps up where some coach goes, whoa, what was that, McNichols? What the hell happened on that play? He killed that guy. Or, oh my God, look, he broke that guy's ankles. They literally had to bring a card out for him. Right? That's what McNichols has to do to unseat someone who's done the work.
Yeah.
You know?
I hear you. I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know. I see a whole lot of again, what was it you said earlier about potential? Potential just means you haven't done shit yet. And that's I hear a lot of people talking potential, and they say, well, who do we get rid of? Do we get rid of this person that we've seen, or do we get rid of this kid who has this untapped, untold potential that could be the next great? He could be the guy that leads us into the next 10 years of Buccaneer football. I'm cautiously optimistic about what we're doing right now, and I want to see what happens in the first couple of real games. Yes. And kind of see what happens. But we do have, and you mentioned it coming up, we do have coming up this week the Redskins. We do have that game, and I want to talk about that just for a minute. I was just kind of doing I do a little bit of homework to prepare for this show, even though it's only my second week. But I happened to stumble across something that I thought was interesting, and that is that if you look at offensive comparison, defensive comparison, us and the Redskins, they are ahead of us in every category offensively, and they are behind us in every category defensively.
Okay.
Just as far as numbers go. So, and I did not that, and that's not saying anything at all other than that I just thought that was interesting, that they're a little bit ahead of us offensively in every category: yards per game, passing yards, rush yards, points per game, and they're a little bit behind us in every category defensively. So, but the real question for me, I think, is, what do we get going into this game for preseason? And what do we see as far as player, who's going to play and who's going to sit?
I think the biggest challenge with that is they playing seafood just doesn't make sense to me at quarterback. I get it. They don't want to get Fitz hurt, because if Jameis gets hurt, they believe Fitz is the answer, because Ryan Griffin got hurt. Now, I don't know how bad his AC strain is. It's soft tissue. So, I mean, in theory, it could be fine. I think there's some interesting roster things they can do to protect themselves there, because I think Ryan Griffin outplayed Ryan Fitzpatrick. But from a quarterback position, someone's got to throw the ball. They're not going to go direct snap to McNichols and just run the rest of the game that way.
Right.
So I think that what we get a chance to see are the Vernon Harrises of the world. We get a chance to see more of the J.J. Wilcoxes, the Justin Evans. See if those guys have got their heads on straight. The offensive line depth is going to get tested. You're going to start seeing these defensive ends that they're trying to find an answer for. And I think you find out whether or not Riley Bullough is going to make this team. And I think that's going to be the compelling storyline for Hard Knocks. Whether the outsider can make his way in. I think he's got the right parts. I normally don't fall for this stuff, but he's a vocal leader. He's always in the right place. And unlike McNichols, and I feel like I'm beating up on McNichols. I don't mean to, but like on the previous podcast I was just a guest on, the question was McNichols and Bullough, which one of those or both, do they make the team? I think McNichols doesn't. Because the lights are on, he hasn't shown up. I think Bullough does, because guess what? When the lights are on, he shows up. If he's on the field, he makes the tackle. If he's on the field, he makes the call. He does the things that Becker does. With Devontae getting injured, I think that he has snuck his way back into that. Even though Darius Glanton's played his ass off, and Darius makes the team, I think he passes Lynch and some of the other guys that might have otherwise made this roster. I think that we get a chance to see those guys have some fun against comparable experience and comparable talent. Riley Bullough going against the ones of another team is a different story. But Riley Bullough going against other twos and threes, I want to see that.
I'm willing to pay the price to see the price of admission to see that one myself. And you mentioned it, and this has been the question that's been bugging me with Bullough. Of course, he's been the sweetheart story of Hard Knocks, and they have one every year. If you've watched the show at all on other teams, there's always that one guy that everybody wants to make it because he's been featured on Hard Knocks, because he's been that face that they've decided to focus on. But it's been for me the question of, is it Riley Bullough or is it Glanton? And I agree with you. When Bullough's been on the field, I think he's been in the right place at the right time. I think he's doing all the right things. He is a vocal leader, but like you said, Glanton has been playing his ass off.
Yes.
And I wonder if Bullough being vocal, being that kind of out front kind of guy and wanting to be a leader on that defense is going to be enough. and him being and the plays that he's made is going to be enough to unseat somebody like Glenn.
What's funny is like I've got the roster breakdown, and I don't know when I ever plan to do it because I don't usually do this, but I do it every year, but I don't usually do a whole show on it. But when you look at my linebacker stack, I've got 6 linebackers making the roster, and Riley's the last one.
Okay.
He's right ahead of Cameron Lynch and Richie Brown. Glanton is the fifth backer. Devontae Bond is the 4th. Kendall Beckwith is the 3rd. Quan Alexander is the 2nd. Levante David's the 1st. I know that'll piss some people off, but it's still true. So I mean, whatever.
I agree. I'm with you on that one. And we turned a few heads with some talk about that last week too, as well with Levante. But so here's the thing then. Do you think, and this is just one more question about the game coming up, do you think that teams are, with what's happened in the last couple of weeks of preseason, do you think that teams are going to be gun shy week 4 as far as letting their starters on the field for very long?
I don't think so any more than they normally are. I think the 4th preseason game, there are some starters they want to see execute a couple of things. I don't think this affects the psyche of coaches. I've never known a coach who went, oh, wow, so-and-so got injured the last game, so it's going to change who I put in this next game. Generally speaking, injuries happen when you're not going full speed. That's always one of the risks. You want to be out there. If you're out there, you're going full speed. If I'm going to put you in for 2 series, go bust your ass for 2 series. Injuries happen. It's a violent sport. It's a collision sport. You can't avoid them. That's like people saying someone's injury prone. Listen, if you have chronic, arthritis or degenerative conditions, yes. But no one's just chronically unlucky and blows out knees. It just doesn't happen, guys. Stop it. It's correlation, not causation. Remember, there's some logic in the universe, and stop with the voodoo dolls.
All right. You know what? We're going to I'm going to wrap this up. But before we do that, I've got one last thing that I'm going to put you through. And I want to say again, here on the West Coast, it is only 10 minutes until 10. So it's still a little early for me. And I want to say how much I appreciate you be willing to stay up late and be on the show with me. I know that the time change is a bitch, and I know it's late for you and you need to get some rest. I want to say again, thank you to my buddy Vance for coming on tonight and doing his new segment. I can't wait to see what he's going to do next time when we get some tacos up in the mix. But a big thank you to Derek Fournier of What the Buck for being a guest on episode 2 of Buccaholics Fan-Tastic. This last segment is something that I came up with. It was an idea that I had a couple weeks ago. If I'm being really honest, I kind of stole it from some old Daily Show episodes where they used to do something similar to this. But I'm calling it the Flash 5. Are you with me? This is going to be 5 questions, rapid fire, as fast as I can give them to you. You got to answer them, and we're not going to think about it too much. We're just going to put answers out there. If you want to add something to your answer, I might give you an extra 3 or 4 seconds to say a little something if you absolutely must. But the idea here is quick, off the top of your head. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, here we go. The Flash 5. Question number 1. Best touchdown play you ever saw live?
Jeremy Stevens, New Orleans for the win.
All right, there we go. Jeremy Stevens in New Orleans for the win. Question number 2. One player that we have cut or traded in the last 5 years that you'd most like to see back?
I don't know if he makes the 5-year window, but Michael Bennett.
Michael Bennett, okay.
It's going to be
Finish
close.
this sentence. Question number 3. Finish this sentence. Dirk Cutter is?
Bright.
Okay. Question number 4. The stadium you would most like to visit for an away game, and it doesn't have to be on our schedule.
I've been there, but I'll go again. Green Bay.
Green Bay, okay. And finally, question number 5. Buck player, past or present, who you admire most off the field.
Vincent Jackson.
Vincent Jackson. Good answer. That's probably one of my top ones too. All right, Derek Fournier of What the Buck. I can't wait to hear more from you. I've been following your camp, little camp casts and updates, and I definitely can't wait to see more from you guys during the season. I'm actually hoping to be there in November. It's not a lock yet, but crossing my fingers and hoping my wife gives me a really good birthday present. I want to wish you guys at What the Buck, and especially What the Buck, really really matters. All the best, and I want to say how much I personally and we the Buccaholics appreciate you guys and the support that you've shown us.
Well, we certainly appreciate you guys. You mentioned it earlier. I didn't get a chance to clarify. Your support for the golf tournament was nothing short of Herculean. You donated 5 times that of the organization that we support, the Buccaneers. And that's not a slight to the Buccaneers. They do what they can. They have to support a lot of different charities. But for a fan group from across the country to do that and that magnitude was huge for us. And, we're going to be releasing, I guess, probably not this week, but next week, the website will be open for next year's golf tournament. We expect it to sell out. It's going to be bigger and better. And we just keep growing and learning. So, this fan ecosystem that's created that you guys are very much an integral part of continues to grow and evolve and learn like everyone does. And it's been a pleasure to get to know the guys and gals in your crew that I do know. And I look forward to meeting the new ones as often as I can.
All right. Well, I know we have a lot of Buccaholics that are planning on coming to home games this season, and I'm sure that you'll be seeing them because basically what we have told them is that we do what we can on our side of the world. But when we're in Tampa, we're going to What the Buck tailgate. We're going to go party with Derek. We're going to go hang out with you guys. Go listen to Kareem Franco do live performance of the anthems right there at the tailgate. You guys are the destination spot for Buccaholics in Tampa. So we can't wait to see more of you guys this season. And hopefully, like I said, I'll get to see you again in person in Tampa, hopefully in November.
Well, to any of you Buccaholics coming down, just let us know. We'll make sure you get taken care of and we'll have a great time.
All right. Derek, thanks one more time for being on the show. I appreciate it. And I'm going to let you go get some sleep, man. We are out of here.
There's the snap. The game is over. The Chargers know it. Their fans know it. And the rowdy Buck bunch across the field behind our benches making more noise than the Chargers. The Buccaholics. The Buccaholics.